Nice to see so many members. Doesn't really seem that this is March because of our weather, but can everybody hear me? Could we please stand up and like to have a Pledge of Allegiance first? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing. You can have a moment of silence for our recently departed brothers and sisters, their families, and other members, and also for any sick and infirmed. Thank you very much. Have a seat. I think you'll see that we have a very, very interesting agenda scheduled here for you today. And a brand new aspect of things is that this is going to be on cable TV.
Not an agenda.
So you guys are all going to be filmed. So make sure you're in your best behavior. Anyway, we had 575 return dues and lifetime and members. 5 people have recently passed. Please remember, we just got a notice where somebody, in sending in a bill, as thoughtful as they were, made the address here at the Franco. That doesn't work very well because we only meet 4 times a year, and there's no way of forwarding that mail and/or /check to us. So in many cases, if you're wondering what happened to the check, make sure you mailed it to the right place. And the right place would be, if you would, to 21 Euclid Ave, Lynn, Massachusetts, 01904. So thank you very much. And one of the things that we're going to do is the Pot of Gold will be closing at the beginning of our first guest speaker. And that way we don't even have to bother announcing it. We do have people from Harvard Community that we'll ask to come up in a moment or two and give us a heads up on everything. A little talking point. How many of you, or have any of you, recently received some sort of a letter or have recently become aware that you should start taking money out of an IRA? Raise your hands if anybody has had that happen. Are any of you required to start taking or continue taking money from your IRAs? Okay. One of the things that I want you to watch out for is when you're taking money out of your IRAs, what's it invested in? You set that IRA up many, many, many years ago. And the investments that you set up years ago may or may not be the investments that you want today. Because maybe 5, 10, 15, or 20 years ago, they may have been a very appropriate and prudent investment for you at that time when you were much younger. The reason I'm bringing this up is because look at the volatility of the market. No one knows what's going on. Nobody knows. Nobody knows how China is going to affect this. Whoever would have thought that the price of oil is as low as it is? Whoever would have thought that we would have almost a negative interest environment? All of this is absolutely outrageous as far as your investments are concerned, and you just need to take a look at those investments. If you're not sure where and how they're invested, you need to talk to the person who is actually helping you with those investments and find out where they are, why are they there, is it prudent and appropriate for you at this age? So, I will, because you can pardon me for being on my last legs of being somewhat ill, I think. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the guest speakers to talk. And Gary, I haven't forgotten you. So you will be called. But if we could first have Lauren Hurley from Harvard Community come up. And by the way, for those of you who are not aware, the Harvard people here, they actually administer our program. So your insurance is not with Harvard. Your insurance is with the city of Lynn. We pay all the claims. Harvard Community administers the plan that we put together. So here you go, Lauren. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rich. Good afternoon. I'm Lauren Hurley. I'm your account representative from Harvard Pilgrim. Harvard Pilgrim, we're always very happy to be partnered with the City of Lynn. You guys are a great account for us, and your partnership really means a lot to us. As you know, we're here every meeting, so if anybody has questions after the meeting, I'm in the back table. Please feel free to come and ask me. One of the benefits of this, you can get a little one-on-one service. On a positive note, there really isn't anything for us to report. Nothing's changing. Things are continuing as usual. If anybody that is on the HMO or PPO plan that has not received their 1099 tax form, we have a self-service tool on our website, harvardpilgrim.org/1099. You can print one out yourself. Member Services is always available for you to have one as well. If you are on the Medicare Enhanced plan, you're not going to receive one, as that plan is already deemed credible by the state of Massachusetts. Other than that, like I said, business as usual. If anybody has questions, please come and see me. It's a great partnership that we have with Lynn, and we hope to continue for many more years. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Person brought up an interesting point to me at last meeting, and he wanted to have this commented and actually, I guess, compliment you for your attendance. And it was for the longest distance traveled to each one of these meetings. How many miles? Sturbridge. So we've got someone who comes here 4 times a year from Sturbridge. We have a round of applause here for that. Now the question is, you may want to talk to Lauren about your sanity, because we do have a good mental health clause in there. So thank you for your loyalty and your insanity for coming by to visit us all of these times. It must be all of your smiling faces. And Gary, if we could possibly have you meander on down front here. I love it when I catch him. I can always tell by his facial expressions that I just caught him a little off kilter. I like it when people start talking and I can just kind of grab them in the moment. It'll be really quick, yes, because Gary, much like Lauren, has only got nothing to say, and that means that's a very good thing, because that means nothing bad is happening. So Gary Brenner, our Director of the Retirement Board.
Hello, everybody. It's so great to see you again. The weather is starting to turn nice and warm. We turned the clocks ahead on Sunday, so spring is here. The Red Sox are playing again. I was just down in Fort Myers. I saw them last week. So I have spring fever, so I will be very brief. The 2 things I just wanted to bring up today. We have, Rich and the organization has 2 great people here speaking, and really pay close attention. Shawn Duhamel, who has done so much for Macris and the Retirees Association. He's also very big in trying to settle that Social Security offset. He's been a key member, and he's been a key member in a lot of key retirement issues. So please pay close attention to Shawn. Shawn's also an attorney. Great guy.
No, not attorney. Don't put that on me.
Oh. I thought you were.
No, Bill is. I'm not.
Oh, okay. Well, all right, he's not an attorney, but he should be.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll take that.
And to my right, we have Frank Valeri. Now, Frank Valeri, a Linner, he was the associate commissioner at PARAC, the associate executive director at PARAC. And if you aren't aware of how important PARAC is to not only the Lynn Retirement Board, but to all of you people, PARAC is the overseeing organization. They're the ones that all the boards report to. And to have someone like Frank, who, when he was there, he was such a big help to us. He helped establish great relationships for us. So whenever the City of Lynn Retirement Board needs something from PERAC, because of Frank and other people that we have known throughout the years, including the Retirement Board, Rich Biagiotti, Buzzy Barton, great people. We have a great relationship with PERAC. And again, Frank is a key man, and we're so happy to have him here today. So between the two people, please pay very close attention to them. And the final thing that I just wanted to bring up, you'll be getting something in the mail if you're receiving a pension. There is an election that will be coming up. Rich's 3-year term will expire in June, so by statute, we do have to send out election notices. So please watch the mail. If you don't receive anything by the end of March, please give me a call, because they will be going out in the next few weeks. Does anyone, before I turn this back, have any questions of the Retirement Board, myself, anything? All right. So again, please pay attention to these two people. We're very lucky to have them. Thank you very much. Great seeing you.
Thank you very much, and that was an awesome segue into my introduction to Frank Valeri. Now, one of the greatest things that Frank has done is not forgot where he came from. And the awesome thing about that is, have any of you noticed that recently the Mass Retirees has had meetings up here in this neck of the woods where you haven't had a heck of a drive to go to, and they're on a regular basis? That's because of Frank, and he remembered where he came from. So, he's got a couple of bills he's going to be talking about. The other thing Frank does is, I'm on the executive board for Macris with Shawn, and we meet frequently throughout the year. Frank does not have to attend those meetings, but he is an invited guest, because the Mass Retirees and the Macris Executive Board are two different things, but they have an awful lot of common turf between the two. So at those meetings, Frank shows up and shares his information to us about what's going on up on the Hill, and we share with him. So I think because of that enhanced communication, I have an awful lot more of information just to bring to these meetings to all of you. So, Mr. Valeri.
Yes.
May I ask you to come up here
Sure.
and please take the mic from me
Sure.
and talk to this group of fellow associates.
Thank you, Rich. Thanks so much. First of all, I guess I need no introduction. Thank Gary Brenner for that. The thing I want to point out is, Rich is right. I never forgot where I came from. I born and brought up in Lynn. I spent 50 years in Lynn. I married into money, moved over to Saugus when I was 50. But I'm still, as Buzzy Barton said, you're still a Lynner at heart, and I truly am. I've been the president of the Mass Retirees Association for the past 3 years, and I've been here 3 times since, so I like to make a visit. Today, I brought Shawn Duhamel, and Gary's right. He's recognized expert on Beacon Hill and healthcare policy and the Social Security issue that we all are familiar with, is the WEP and the GPO. But I took over for Ralph White, who was the president, and Ralph was here for 45 years. And at the end of my career, and Gary pointed out I was with PERAC, and I had a great relationship with all the retirement boards, but since he's given me a lot of praise, I got to give him praise, because I dealt with all the administrators throughout the state, the 105 boards, as a deputy executive director, and I can tell you there are a handful of directors you can pick out as being the best in the state, and Gary's right there, I'll tell you. You're very lucky to have Gary as your administrator. Nothing goes by, Gary, without you people no one's going on, and I have to give him praise as much as he gave me, because I'm sincere about that. As Gary, we were the big bad oversight agency, and we had to audit Gary, and we had disabled retirees that we had to oversee, right, Don? And we had a lot of other issues, but we had to try to deal as close as we could with all the boards. And I especially like dealing with Lynn because of my heart. My heart has always been in Lynn. But we represent 55,000 as a Mass Retirees Association. I know last year I think I asked for a show of hands. A lot of members here in Lynn. We got a great turnout in Lynn in Mass Retirees. A high percentage of the retirees at Lynn joined the Mass Retirees Association. And we do provide advocacy work and provide informational materials to all of our members. We essentially advocate on Beacon Hill. Beacon Hill and the GIC and throughout state government, we try to advocate to obviously retain and enhance your retirement benefits. And in Lynn, as the last 15 to 20 years, most of the enhancements have come via a local option, which means we get the law passed and the ball's in your court, and it's up to the board and the city government to adopt these enhancements. For instance, the city of Lynn, the retirement board took on and increased their base, which I'm very proud to see Lynn take a step up. And it was Buzzy and Richie, the rest of the board members, Gary had orchestrated the thing, and we had the city council. You had great leadership in Lynn. I'm very familiar with Danny Cahill, the city council. Buzzy also serves in the city council. Not to mention you got Brendan Crichton, who took my job in Tommy McGee's office. You got a wonderful delegation, and they always will be there for you, because I know, because I see them on Beacon Hill, and they always do the right thing for the retirees. But essentially, our advocacy work is for two things: your pension benefits and your health insurance. And Shawn's going to touch upon health insurance because he is an expert in that area as well as Social Security. But we've seen health insurance benefits being the most significant cost and effect of retirees' survival and being able to have some type of security throughout retirement. So we have been very active on Beacon Hill. There's going to be a big change in GIC. Shawn's going to touch about that. A new executive director, because Dolores Mitchell is retiring from the Group Insurance Commission after almost 30 years. But there is a spin-off effect with that, and that's what you're going to be aware of, because under the health care reform a few years ago, plan structure has to follow, and Shawn will get into that. And so you got to pay attention a little bit to what's going on at the state level, the GIC. And in the association, we do represent, like I said, 55,000 of all retirees, state, local, county retirees. And we directly send a newsletter every 2 months to every members by direct mail. That newsletter, and since I've been here with the association, I've recognized how well respected and how well received this letter is. And I can tell you after 3 years what a labor of love it is in this office every 2 months putting this document together. It's all done internally. We try to provide all the information we can gather dealing with your pension benefits and health insurance benefits. We provide local news. And this newsletter, every meeting, people will come up and say, oh, I read in the newsletter this, I read in that. So whenever they have questions and answers, it's all stems from the newsletter. And it's something I can tell you, it's so well respected on Beacon Hill. We send it to all the legislative offices every 2 months. The legislators are looking for it, and they actually do read it, which brings me to, obviously, our advocacy work. We have a wonderful relationship with all the members of the House and the Senate. We are a bipartisan organization. We obviously get a lot done up on Beacon through the Democratic leadership, but we are bipartisan. We are able to walk into offices, and what we do is we make sure that you people have a voice on Beacon Hill. We got to make sure that out of the 10,000 bills that are filed, they understand the 1,000 or so that are filed for health care and pension benefits, what they actually do and what effect they'll have on the constituency of public retirees. This group was structured because Ralph White put his life into this organization and created a wonderful organization. It's networked throughout the state. We have members in every legislative district. We're involved in legislative fights. We provide our information to all the members of the House so they can get the real facts on all the issues that face you people throughout retirement. In addition to our direct advocacy work on Beacon Hill, in the area of education, in the newsletter, we continually update our webpage. In our organization, we're a small organization with multiple hats. Shawn is a photographer, an expert in healthcare, expert in Social Security, webpage manager. So we do a lot together. We kind of share a lot of responsibilities. But Shawn is constantly updating our webpage. If you haven't been on that, you should check that out if you have access to the internet, because we have instant ability to communicate issues and how they're coming on, how they're changing day by day. We also have the email blast, which I've been kind of pushing. We've been asking people for email addresses because we have the ability to do instant response through emails. We can turn an email blast and send a message out to all our members, which is probably over 30% of our members right now with the email addresses. And we can provide instant immediate response to our membership on things that are going on in Beacon Hill. As Rich pointed out, area meetings we have throughout the state. I have expanded it, and Rich is right. I brought one into the North Shore. We hadn't had one in the North Shore. So May 6th, we're going to be up at the Peabody Marriott, right off 128, that's off Centennial Drive. May 6th, we have a meeting for all the people in the North Shore area. I hope if you are members to be there. If you're not members, we have information on the side over here. We have membership packets. Even if you don't join, you want to come to the meeting, please come. We provide information, updates on everything that's going on. These meetings go on throughout the year. We give it up in the summer, but we're through in the fall and all through the spring. We spent a week down in Florida, 4 days down in Florida. We had 2 Gulf Coast meetings. We had a great turnout in both meetings. We filled both halls. People down there love to stay in tune with what's going on up in Beacon Hill in Massachusetts. So we get a great turnout in these meetings down in Florida. We get several thousand members who live there part-time and full-time. Just the 2 bills, Rich mentioned I was going to talk about 2 bills. 2 bills that I think that relate to you people. And somebody over on the table, they asked me about the Veterans Bill, which is one bill which I got great news. The Committee on Public Service last week or the week before reported the bill out favorably, which is the first step in the legislative process. It's a great thing. It's going to increase that $300 stipend that you didn't even know you probably got. But most people call and say, what is this bonus that you got? Well, you got it when you retired. It's $300. It was a benefit that was set in 1957. We're looking to update that benefit so that if you're getting the $300 originally, it'll go up to $1,000. We're in the process of working with the lead sponsor, and actually PERAC is doing some type of cost analysis for the lead sponsor. We're hopeful that we can sit down with the leadership in House and Ways and Means and try to move. We went to House Ways and Means, Shawn, didn't it? Mm-hmm. We have both bills. There were 2 bills filed, one in the House, one in the Senate. This bill was sent over to House Ways and Means. We'll be working on that bill this spring before the end of the session. One of the bills, the Option C pop-up. I don't know if you good men or a woman who try to provide for a spouse upon retirement and chose Option C. If you did that before 2004, what happened was they used an old actuarial table, and the Option C benefit was significantly overly reduced. This bill seeks to give some kind of retroactive payment for those people who chose C and got the lower benefit. The bill calls for a 12% increase. That bill also, just last week, got a favorable report. So it got an initial report, recommendation from the Committee on Public Service. Again, that bill will be going to Ways and Means. Along with the Veterans Bill, we'll be working with Ways and Means and leadership to move that through the process. But our advocacy work not only goes around Beacon Hill and around state government generally. We have expanded. The association has always been an advocate and they've always been opposed to, and Shawn will get into this, but opposed to the federal WEP law and the GPO law. It's Social Security. So our advocacy work does not just is not limited to Beacon Hill. We do go to Washington, D.C., actively lobby, meet with other state organizations, retiree associations, and our point person on that has been Shawn Duhamel, who's our legislative director. Shawn is a guy I mentioned before. He's recognized by many on Beacon Hill, whether it be be lobbyists, legislators, trade associations, unions. They all look to Shawn on health care policy and Social Security. So without any further ado, thank you, everyone. Thank you for your patience and your attention. It's nice to be back to Lynn. I'd like to see everybody. I want to thank Rich Biagiotti for the invite to be here. But I'd like to have Shawn come up and just talk about those 2 issues, which is the weapon, Social Security issue, as well as touch upon how the state health insurance might have some effect on you people here in Lynn and Harvard. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thanks for that segue.
Thank you, Frank, and I want to thank Rich Biagiotti and Buzzy Barton and the Lynn Retirees Association, Lynn Retirement Board. Gary, thank you for your kind words. And I'm not a lawyer. You almost promoted me. I'm not sure I'd want that promotion. But I also want to thank Lynn Community TV for broadcasting this and helping us to tell our story here in Lynn and around the state. You know, the issues that we're talking about here today just don't affect Lynn public retirees. Many of these issues, particularly health care, affect all retirees, both public and private sector. So it doesn't matter if someone's retired from the GE down the street, which we drove by on the way in here today, or from the city of Lynn, or from the state, or any other walk of life here in Massachusetts. You know, they're getting squeezed just as hard, or in some cases even more so than our members. And one of the things that we have tried to do now since 1968, we're coming up on our 50th anniversary of the creation of our association, which is something I know that all of us are very, very proud of, and I'm very proud to carry on the legacy that Ralph White created with a handful of other public retirees back in the late 60s, when they realized that there was a real need for an association such as ours to do this type of work and to be truly the voice of the retired public employee here in Massachusetts. And we have grown our reach throughout the country. I'm going to talk a little bit in a few minutes about Social Security. But one of the things we're most proud of is trying to work together, whether it's with the other unions, whether it's with AFSCME. You know, Barbara's here from the Mass Senior Action League, does a great job for retirees across the state. We try to work together as best we can on a variety of these issues, and particularly when it comes to health care. All eyes in Massachusetts really at this point in time look to the State Group Insurance Commission, look to the Massachusetts Healthcare Connector, and the types of programs that those agencies and organizations, and with the private sector insurance companies such as Harvard Pilgrim or Blue Cross or Unicare, depending on which plan you're on, we're really the driving force nationally when it comes to healthcare and healthcare delivery and the affordability and the quality of the care. And for public retirees, what happens in Boston with the GIC at this point in time is really one of the most important indicators of what's to come at the local level. Now, I know here in Lynn, Rich, for instance, and the Lynn City Council, and I know, Buzzy, you've been part of this, and various mayors throughout the years have done a very good job of making sure that your health plan, the administration of your health plan, and the ability for your local government to have direct input into that health plan has remained here in Lynn. And that's something that you should all be very, very proud of. But one of the things that, whether it's the Lynn government or any other local government across Massachusetts, they look to what's happening in Boston with the GIC at the state level as the barometer, so to speak, for what's going to come down the road. So the changes that are taking place right now at the state level, a couple of years from now, might trickle down and impact the quality of your care here in Lynn, and the amount of money you're paying for your health care plans here in Lynn. And at the very least, those conversations are going to happen, and they're going to be brought up at the bargaining table between the retirees, the active employees, and the city government. So whether you're a local retiree or a state retiree, we're all in this together, and we all need to pay very close attention to what's going on. Now, the good news at the state level is that just last week, the GIC held its annual rate-setting meeting. They are remaining firm and holding steady on any increases in copayments and deductibles. We're not seeing any increase. The way that the GIC views this is that retirees are already, quote unquote, paying enough out of their own pockets. And it really comes down to the question of what can any one person afford to pay. Now, you hear some of these outside groups like the Massachusetts Fiscal Alliance, and I don't want to get overly political, but the Mass Fiscal Alliance continues to send mailings throughout Massachusetts. And I don't know if they've really hit here in Lynn or not. But from where I grew up down on the South Shore, and I live in Boston now, but down on the South Shore, they've been very active. And they, quite frankly, have been an opponent of ours. They would lead the general public to believe that your health care benefits are unsustainable, unaffordable, and undeserved. And we know that nothing could be further from the truth. But they look at the cost of the insurance and they try to frighten people into believing that their tax dollars somehow are being wasted and that we can't afford this going forward and it's going to bankrupt government. That's not true. That's absolutely not true. But that's what's being said out there. Now, that's not to say that certain changes aren't going to be necessary with health care. It's a very complicated benefit. We all know that. You get the statements in the mail just reading it, trying to figure out what they're talking about can be very complicated at times. We also know it's expensive. It's expensive for you, it's expensive for the taxpayers, it's expensive in the private sector as well. Again, we're all in this together, but the answer isn't quite simply shifting more and more of that cost burden onto your shoulders when you can't afford it. We all know that the cost of living increases, even though here in Lynn, they've done a great job with the retirement system and the city government working hand in hand to try to keep those COLAs up to a level that's at least going to put a little bit more money in your pockets year in and year out, and they're doing the best they can there, and there's that level of cooperation, which we greatly appreciate, but it's not enough. And we know right now at the national level, there is no Social Security COLA for 2016 because of the consumer price index for last year was flat. And we have argued for years that the CPI is not an accurate reflection of the true cost of living on retirees. But unfortunately, that's the standard that the federal government's using. So if you are lucky enough to receive a Social Security payment, it didn't increase at all. Your City of Lynn pension barely increased. Yet, every time you turn around, you're expected to pay more and more and more out of your own pockets for the same benefits, or even in some cases less benefits than you used to get. And as they say, it reaches a tipping point. So again, at the state level, no change in co-payments and deductibles or the so-called out-of-pocket costs that state retirees and a growing number of local retirees are paying. Just keep in mind, there are about 50 communities now that participate in the GIC for their active and retired public employees. All told, 430,000 people in Massachusetts receive their health care through the GIC, and that number grows year after year. And it has to be a local decision. That's a decision that's worked well for some communities and has not been a good idea for others. It's not a one-size-fits-all proposition, and we've been very clear on that. We want to make sure that local control remains and that you have that level of input, which here in Lynn, that's been absolute and never been in doubt all these years. So that's the good news at the state level. The one thing, though, that we're concerned about right now, and you may have, if you've received our most recent newsletter, and hopefully you're all members of our association, please, if you're not currently a member, would love to have you join with us. And before I forget, we also, not that I want to turn this into a sales pitch, but it's really strength in numbers. We represent approximately 60,000 Massachusetts public retirees from all walks of life across the Commonwealth. But we need more. And it's not to grow our internal budget or for any kind of power on our end. It's simply to put the power in your hands. It's strength in numbers. The more retirees band together and advocate on behalf of the things that you've earned and you've paid for your entire lives, the more successful we're going to be. And that's the fact of the matter. And I know that Lynn is a very political city. All of you have grown up with this, and you know what I'm talking about. But if you know people who are not currently members of our association, whether they be friends or family or neighbors, get them to join with us. Show them our newsletter, show them our website, which is massretirees.com, for those of you watching at home, massretirees.com, massretirees.com. A little sales pitch there, but ask them, take a look at what we're all about. Our dues are only $35 a year. We try to keep it as inexpensive as possible. But the more of us joining together, the more successful we're going to be and the more protections you're going to have. So the thing, though, that we're concerned about right now with the GIC is we're going through a transition period. Dolores Mitchell, who's been the executive director now for 29 years, really long time, she's retiring this month. And she's 86 years old. She'll be 87 in July, but she looks like she's 61. I can only hope that I have her energy and wherewithal when I'm in my 80s that she's able to bring to bear every single day. It's amazing. But she's decided it's time for her to call it a career, as they say, and she's retiring at the end of this month. So there's been a search underway for a new director, which is very, very important to us. While we've had some disagreements with Dolores over the years, it's never been personal. Her door has always been open to us, day or night. Frank and I both have her cell phone number. We'd call her anytime. And even though at times you might agree to disagree, there's always been that mutual level of respect, and which is the least that we can ask for when you're dealing with issues that impact so many people and so important to everyone's life out there. We want to make sure that whomever replaces Dolores at the GIC, or who's ever her successor, because no one's ever going to be able to replace her, but whoever succeeds her at the GIC has that same level of respect and commitment for all of you that Dolores has shown now over almost 3 decades. That's very important to us. Now, they've narrowed it down to 2 finalists. One gentleman previously worked at the GIC, Bob Carey. He's well known to us, and he's someone that we believe we could work with. The other candidate is Dr. Roberta Herman. She used to be, and I think our friends from Harvard Pilgrim will know who Dr. Herman is. And maybe afterwards we can talk a little bit, you can weigh in. I don't know Dr. Herman from Adam. I've never met the doctor before. Looking forward to. But she is previously the chief operating officer and I believe the medical director at Harvard Pilgrim previously. And she worked at Harvard Pilgrim when Governor Baker was the CEO there. So our feeling is that Dr. Herman is probably Governor Baker's primary candidate for the job since there's a relationship. But we want to make sure that whichever one of these individuals is hired for this job, that they have 110% commitment to maintaining the excellent benefits and the affordability that we see at the state level. And again, because it's just so important to each and every person that we represent. So with that, let me talk just for a couple of minutes about what's happening down in Washington with the windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset. Can I just see a show of hands? How many of you here are impacted by the WEP law? So a little bit fewer, Frank, than we've been seeing at some of our meetings. We had 2 meetings last week down on the Gulf Coast of Florida that Frank and I flew down there just for a couple of days. We were at a meeting in the Tampa Bay area. We had a little bit over 200 of our members at the Elks Club in Tampa Bay in Largo, Florida. And then the very next day, we were down in Fort Myers Beach. We drove down in the morning to the American Legion in Fort Myers Beach. We had about 160 retirees at that meeting. So both meetings were jam-packed, and more than half of our members at each one of those meetings raised their hand when I asked that same question. So for those of you who did not raise your hand, to briefly summarize what this is all about, there are 2 laws that were created by Congress back in the 1980s that have reduced or eliminated the ability of public retirees to collect Social Security benefits. And the reason for this is that Massachusetts is one of 7 states that does not participate in Social Security at all for our public employees. So when you worked here for the city of Lynn, whether you're a teacher or a firefighter or a police officer or a DPW, administrative worker, regardless of where in government you worked, you did not pay into Social Security in that role. In Massachusetts, we've never paid into Social Security, and we probably never will. Our pension systems here were created before Social Security was created in 1935. Originally, we weren't allowed to participate in Social Security. The law prohibited it. That changed many decades later, but by then, we already had very well-established pension plans here. This was well after World War II, probably after many of you had already started working in government, paying your contribution into the Lynn public pension system, and there just simply wasn't the ability to add Social Security in as a benefit while still providing the same excellent benefits that you have right now for the Lynn retirement system. Quite honestly, we could not afford to pay for both. And the cities and towns in the state of Massachusetts could not afford to pay for both. So we said no thank you to Social Security once the offer was made to allow us to join. Well, Congress turned around and said, look, if you don't want to join, that's fine, we're not going to make you, but we're not going to allow your retirees to collect both benefits anymore. We're going to stop what they called back then double dipping. Well, double dipping is a misnomer. It doesn't exist. There's no such thing as it. All we have ever asked for, and I think all anyone wants, is simply receive a Social Security benefit that you earned and you paid for when you were working. So even though you may have been a firefighter or a cop or a teacher, you still had some type of public or private sector work experience either before, after, or during your employment here in Lynn. Particularly with firefighters. Many firefighters, because of the nature of their shifts, they have a few days in a row off, so they work a second job. Helps them put food on the table for their family, pay for their kids to go to college, save for retirement, and earn credits under Social Security. But because of the Social Security reform law that was passed in the 80s with Ronald Reagan was president, Tip O'Neill was the speaker, it prevents today's retirees from doing that, even though they paid for it. So they might receive some Social Security benefit, but it's greatly reduced. And these laws, and Barbara and I were talking about that before the meeting today, these two laws, particularly the government pension offset law, disproportionately impact women, not only here in Massachusetts, but all across the country. There is an extremely regressive and harmful, sometimes financially devastating law that disproportionately impacts women all across the country. So you may have, like many women, worked, then stayed home with the kids for a little while, went back to work once the kids were of school age, earned benefits under both systems, but because you paid into a public retirement system in Massachusetts, your Social Security benefit is either eliminated or at least greatly reduced. So we've been fighting a battle now going all the way back to 1982. I was in junior high school back then. But our association has been one of the leading advocates at the national level to repeal these two laws. And here in Massachusetts, we're the only retiree organization that's now actively involved with the leading bill that would change the WEP and the GPO. It's H.R. 711 for those of you who are interested in it. H.R. 711 would not repeal the WEP and the GPO laws, but it would reform them. A couple of years ago, it became obvious to us that we needed to change our tactics when it came to these two issues. And through a series of meetings in Washington with other impacted organizations around the country and the unions and our congressional leadership, it became obvious that unfortunately a repeal of the WEP or the GPO or both just wasn't going to be possible. So we had a choice to make. Either we could continue to talk about repealing these laws and come to meetings like this and complain about it, or we could change our tactics, find some common ground with our allies around the country, compromise, and reach a result that ultimately would put more money in our members' pockets. And that's what we've opted to do. For the last 2 years, we've worked very closely with the retirees in Texas and the retirees in the state of Ohio to formulate now what is known as H.R. 711. The two lead sponsors of H.R. 711 are Richard Neal from here in Massachusetts, from Springfield. He's the congressman from Western Mass. He's the dean of our congressional delegation. All 9 members of our congressional delegation have signed on as co-sponsors of H.R. 711. And I can't say enough good things about Congressman Seth Moulton, who represents the city of Lynn. You know, he's the new member on the block in terms of our congressional delegation, just got elected a year ago, really. And he hit the ground running with this issue, reached out to Frank personally, wanted information on what it was all about. I met with him about a year ago now down in Washington, and he immediately signed on as a co-sponsor of this bill. The ink wasn't even dry on him taking the oath down there in Congress, and he was involved in this issue. Now, Nikki Songus from the Lowell area, Catherine Clark from down in Medford and in Melrose, Mike Capuano, everyone in this part of the state, really all of our delegation again, but particularly the people who represent this part of Eastern Mass, have been very, very aggressive and proactive on this issue, not only now, but going back over the past 30 plus years. And we have to give credit, even though it's discouraging and disappointing that we're still talking about this issue and we haven't reached results. If it hadn't been for the work that people like Ted Kennedy and John Kerry and all the members of our delegation over the past 30 years have done to keep this issue alive nationally, we wouldn't be at the point that we're at today, where we feel strongly and very optimistic that we finally might be close to resolving this. Now, what is significant mostly about H.R. 711 is the fact that the lead sponsor of the bill is a congressman from the Houston, Texas area, believe it or not, named Kevin Brady. What makes Kevin Brady so significant, beyond the fact that he's a Republican, is that he is the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee in the U.S. House of Representatives. He is now one of the most powerful and important people in our government. And Kevin Brady, for the last decade, has been trying to resolve this issue. He has a very good relationship with the public employee unions, particularly the firefighters, and all of his retiree organizations down in Texas. He came up through the Texas legislature, serving as a Texas legislator before being elected to Congress. And as he told Frank and myself about a year and a half ago when we met with him in Washington to really get this thing moving, is that his philosophy and why he got involved in government in the first place was to quote-unquote get things done. That's what he views his role as, in working behind the scenes quietly with groups that you might not agree with on everything. You know, he's a conservative Republican, I'm a Democrat from Massachusetts. We're not going to see eye to eye on every issue, and we don't have to. But we'll work together where there's common ground and you compromise with each other and you have a mutual degree of respect. It's, from our standpoint, very refreshing to be working across the aisle in a bipartisan fashion with organizations around the country to get something done that benefits all of us. And right now in our country, I think we need more of that. Now, just last week, I was in Washington with a group of retiree officials from Texas, Republicans and Democrats. And it was on the eve of the Texas Republican primary. But there wasn't any kind of partisan bickering between us. We were there for one reason and one reason only, to help all of our members. And all of you share that same common ground. So where things stand right now is that H.R. 711, the way it's written right now, only impacts the windfall elimination provision. It reforms the law, it creates a new Social Security formula that more accurately takes into account the number of years you paid into Social Security and the number of years you worked outside of Social Security. And at the end of the day, for both people who are already retired and have been a victim of the WEP, or future retirees, it would come up with a new calculation. So for those of you who have already been impacted by the WEP, if we're successful in getting this bill passed, your Social Security benefit would increase anywhere from $100 to $150 a month, depending on how long you paid into Social Security. The more years you worked under the system, the more you can expect to get back from it, which only makes sense. And we've said all along that we don't want any more than what you earned, what you deserve. You know, this is not an entitlement. You paid for it. You paid good money for it. All we want is simply to receive what our members have earned and what they have paid for. It's as simple as that. And whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, people seem to agree that that's fair, that's right, and we're now getting to the point where we can finally do something about it. Now, in terms of the government pension offset, this has been a trickier issue, because the government pension offset applies to spousal benefits under Social Security. So take it, for instance, a teacher who never worked in the private sector long enough to achieve his or her 40 quarters. Under the old Social Security law, you could receive half of your spouse's Social Security benefit. The GPO pretty much eliminates that. And we've had a very difficult time until recently trying to figure out exactly how to address that situation. And thankfully, President Obama, in his budget proposal for next year that was recently filed, has included language of impacting the government pension offset and the windfall elimination provision. It's very similar to what Kevin Brady has drafted in H.R. 711, and we really thank the president and give him credit for reigniting the debate over the government pension offset. And now it's our hope that we can combine both of these issues into one bill and hopefully get them addressed during the current legislative session. Now, last week I had the opportunity to meet with officials from the AARP, from the International Association of Firefighters, from AFSCME, and from the National Association of Retired Federal Employees and the AFL-CIO. Our mission in Washington last week was to meet with these other organizations, answer any questions that they may have over H.R. 711, and try to enlist their support, their active support, to passing this bill during the current congressional session. And these meetings were very productive. There's a few details that need to be worked out, but we feel confident that over the coming weeks, a number of these groups, if not all of them, will be in a position where they can publicly endorse the passage of H.R. 711. That will go a long way toward giving Chairman Brady the opportunity to bring this bill to the floor of the House of Representatives before the summer recess and finally take a vote on it. There's never been a vote on reforming or repealing the WEP or the GPO, and we're very hopeful that 2016 will be the final year for that. So if you are a member of our association, we are going to keep you updated week by week on our website, on our toll-free hotline that we update every Friday, through the email blast that Frank referred to. We want to keep you engaged. If you are impacted by the WEP or the GPO, the one thing I want to ask you to do is reach out to, whether it's Congressman Moulton's office or wherever else in Massachusetts you happen to live, reach out to your local congressman. First of all, say thank you for supporting HR 711 and ask them to go one step further. Become your active advocate on the floor of the House of Representatives to get their colleagues to sign on to this bill and encourage Chairman Brady to bring this bill to a full vote of the House before the summer recess. That's what we're working on. And again, start off by saying thank you. They're doing their job, and we want to make sure that they continue to make this issue a priority going forward. So with that, I want to again thank Rich and all of you for the opportunity to come here today. I know, Rich, if you want to do any Q&A, if you have time for that, or...
I think so.
Anybody have a quick question, or... Come on, you can't let a Lynn native walk out of the room without one question for us. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Shawn. Now, I don't know whether that's good or bad. You either baffled them with your brilliance, or they were just so awestruck that they really liked what they heard. This is the first time I think we've heard anything really significantly positive that actually may happen and put dollars back in your pocket. This could be immense. First of all, I think we should give Shawn a round of applause for spending all of his time, which he did not have to do, to come here to film us. And again, a round of applause to our guest speakers, from Lauren to Gary, to both Shawn and Frank. I wish you a very, very happy and healthy spring, and look forward very much to seeing all of you this coming June. So with that said, thank you very, very much, and have a great rest of this spring.